Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Hannah Elliott.
And I'm Matt Miller. This is Hot Pursuit. Coming up on today's podcast, multi-million-dollar whips. The market for new cars is sputtering, but there's a feeding frenzy for collectible rides. We go inside the auction market. Plus, Arndt Ellinghorst joins us. A big deal in automotive research. I grew up reading his notes out of ISI. We'll probe him for his thoughts on the industry and Porsche specifically as he restores and races classic 911s. And we're going to talk about Hannah's upcoming column without spoiling it for you. What is the most important or impactful car of the century thus far? It's a big question, and we'll discuss.
Exactly. I can't wait to talk about it. But first, we have to talk about what's going on in the auction market. And I feel like we have spoken about it the last week or two, but the hits just keep coming. And it takes a minute to really wrap your head around what is going on and to compare notes with all these other analysts and hear what they're seeing. And the takeaway seems to be that we are in this weird growth moment for auctions. They seem to be double and triple last year's sales, especially led by Ferraris, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the GTO, and as a deep tease, you have booked David Lee, the buyer of that $38.5 million Bianco Speciale 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO for our podcast next week. So
yes,
that's coming up. But to me, even more interesting, or it's evolved into an even more interesting story, is the Enzo that sold at Kissimmee for almost $18 million.
Yes.
Right? And it's interesting on a few different levels, Hannah, because first of all, this is a new generation of cars bringing the top dollar. And you've been reporting on this for a couple of years now. So that's not the point that I think is most interesting. But you're seeing the values of the older cars that were the most collectible previously start to come down. So for a Bugatti, Type 37 or whatever, and even for the GTO, you may see lower prices in the future of those pre-war or 60s and 70s cars as the wealthy youth of today favors the 80s and 90s cars.
Well, yes, and I want to be very, very careful about how we frame this because I know Steve Serio and others will correct us if we don't get it right. But I think it's accurate to say that those older cars from pre-war, certainly, but possibly even from the 50s and 60s and 70s are falling off a little bit in the interest around them. They are no longer driving the growth in the market. What's driving the growth are cars from the 80s, 90s, and later, these so-called young timers or modern classic cars. But we need to make sure that we say that the best of the best always have buyers. And that goes for whether it's pre-war, that goes for whether it's a 250 GTO, that goes for anything, that goes for Porsche 930 turbos. The reason why this particular 250 GTO sold for 38 and not the 50 million plus that it had been asked for was because of the car itself, not because of the market. And there are a couple things that made this particular car less desirable than a GTO that might be worth 50 to 60 million. Namely, it's not an engine numbers matching. The original engine is not in the car. It's not a numbers matching car. It's never raced outside of Europe.
It's wrong-hand drive.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. And it's white, which could be a positive or negative depending on how you look at it. And
to me, that's got to be a positive. It's the only white one.
Yes, but there's another argument that says, but red is classic. A Ferrari should be red. A Ferrari is supposed to be red. So just because this Ferrari, yes, it sold for a lot of money. It didn't sell for as much as a lot of the other 36 GTOs are worth. But that's because of the car. The car sold for what it was worth. So we should say that.
Okay.
But to your bigger point, yes, it's these supercars from the 80s and later. And I also want to say, and we haven't talked about this, about that yellow Enzo, a lot of these cars have crazy low miles on them.
Right.
Like this Enzo is 649 miles, period. There was that F50 that also sold at the same auction for over $12 million that had 252 miles on it.
What a waste.
Yeah, and the thing we're seeing is, and we talked about this on TV, there's a growing contingent of people who are using this purely for investment. And I don't want to say speculation, but it's these ultra low mileage cars that are getting bought. And I don't think we can expect that they're going to get a lot of miles added to them.
It's so sad. Actually, somebody just there. By the way, on Bring a Trailer right now, there are two 2026 911 GT3 Tourings for sale.
How many miles do they have on them? Like 10?
One of them has, I think, 38 miles. And a commenter said, "Oh, this is great. The new owner can easily put 200, 300, or even 400 miles on this car." It's so pathetic and sad. I don't know why Porsche allows people to flip cars that way. I know it's, I'm coming from the investment world. It should be NBD to me because these are just assets at the end of the day, but it hurts somehow and it feels wrong. But the Ferrari, I think the Enzo is specifically interesting, maybe just to me because I don't typically like yellow cars, and I think it looks fantastic. B, I've never really liked an Enzo before, and now all of a sudden I desperately want an Enzo. And C, there are so many conspiracy theories kind of about why it went for this much. And correct me if I'm wrong, but before this, Enzos were going for single-digit millions, like half or less. And so I heard Spike Ferrison say maybe there were a few billionaires bidding next to each other and they had been drinking. And so
didn't Dave from Mecum this morning said there were about 3 very interested parties? Yes,
Dave Majors, the CEO of Mecum also, and they ran the auction, also said that to us this morning.
That's all you need is 2, really.
That's true. So Johnny Lieberman and others have floated this story, but I heard it from him. The journalist said that he heard the buyer already owned 6 Enzos and was trying to bring up the value with this bid on his 7th, which would make sense because then another one sold for $12 million right after that. So it's already
These
working.
are not mutually exclusive theories.
Then you're correct.
I'm very, very, as a reporter, very uncomfortable just spouting, repeating chatter. Just for the record, for all our listeners, this conversation, I am not participating in the chatter because we don't know.
Well,
we don't know.
I'm never hesitant to share speculation as long as I source.
Sure.
Where it's coming from. And these are people who are incredibly active in the automotive industry. Obviously, Spike Ferrison buys and sells a lot of very high dollar cars.
Not this level, though.
Maybe not, but I think approaching it, and especially if he's buying for Jerry or selling for Jerry, and he definitely advises Seinfeld on those on purchases and sales. And, and Johnny's sitting at the dinner table. So I don't know. I think the speculation is a really fun part. And as long as I say who it is and we make clear that it's only speculation, I feel like it's fair journalistic practice.
Can I pivot a minute?
Yes.
This is an automatic transmission car, right?
I hadn't even thought about that.
Because Matt,
that's true.
This breaks all your rules.
Well, no,
but you still love it.
There can be, I think it's fair to say there can be double-digit $1 million exceptions to the rule.
Okay, all right. But
that's fair. I ran, before I talked to Lawrence Stroll, I interviewed Lawrence Stroll earlier this week because he owns Aston Martin and Aston Martin F1, and they had their livery reveal. I again ran the numbers on Astons to find out in the secondhand market, in auctions and on, used car sites, the manual transmission cars go for sometimes only 40 to 80% more, but often double or triple more than the automatic versions go. And obviously they're much cheaper, but if you're looking for a 2007 Vantage V8, you can pick up an auto car for $30,000. And if you want one with a stick, it's going to be 50 or 60. the same is true of Ferraris at a higher price point, obviously, and Porsches as well. Like, think about when you're looking at 964s that are for sale. You don't even consider the fact that there could be a Tiptronic in there, but there are sometimes. And the same.
So are you saying that the car itself could supersede your desire for a manual?
Not at that. No, not at that in that generation.
Okay. All right.
But I know that happened to you at some point because.
Well, I've got a. Are you talking about the Corvette?
No, Magnus got a. Isn't the 991 Turbo his first PDK car?
Yeah. It happens. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what is pushing the collecting market for a minute, because I think it's important to say that there's no one thing. Like, everyone's been asking, what is pushing? Literally last year, every major auction house, Sotheby's, Gooding, Broad Arrow, even collecting cars and Bonhams, were all up. And most of them were up by like double-digit percentages. Most were made record results last year. And the growth is coming from interest in late model supercars like Lamborghini, Ferrari, McLaren, Bugatti, etc., even Porsche. But I also think the influence of social media and online auctions shouldn't be overlooked, because you and I know social media content is at an all-time fever pitch, and it's so easy to look at cars, and it's so easy to learn about cars, and it's so easy to find other people who like the same kind of cars you like. I don't think that should be overlooked as a huge primary factor in pushing the collector car market up.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the online auctions and Bring a Trailer in specific.
I think you're spot on. And by the way, we should point out to listeners that you wrote a column about that went out this week. And everybody I've talked to, even people who aren't car people, are reading that and discussing it. Of course, with the advent of Bring a Trailer, I mean, you and me and Barry Ritholtz and me and my neighbor Eric and me and my brother Luis, we're like sending BAT auctions to each other all the time.
I know.
Sometimes without comment, I'll just send an auction.
No comment needed.
Yeah.
And also, you know what I love about that? Okay, like with music, we all have songs that we know we shouldn't like, but we do. It's a guilty pleasure. Same with entertainment, like TV. We know we have shows that we know aren't cool, but we watch them anyway. Everybody has a car equivalent of that.
Yes.
And what do you what's your guilty pleasure car that you know is wrong, but you don't care if you don't want to be right?
Well, I don't feel that bad about it, but like I love the older generation Kia Soul, for example.
What? We have never spoken about this.
I know, but whenever I see like a 2010s Kia Soul on the street, I like point it out to my wife. I don't know why.
Where is this coming from?
I don't know. I like them. And then
that is so weird.
There is a similarly small Renault. Everybody else likes the version that has like eyes and eyelashes in the front, but I like a different one. It's the rear engine, like compact Renault. I can't even remember because I don't live in Europe anymore and you don't see them in America, but that's about as bad as it gets for me, I would say. The reason why I ask is I feel like, going back to Bring a Trailer, when you start texting your friends cars that you're watching, it kind of slowly comes out what your secret guilty pleasure is, because you end up sending those links to those cars. But you have never sent me a link to a Kia. No, because I don't. I don't really want one. By the way, the Renault is the Twingo, and that is a car.
You've talked about that before.
I actually would buy a Twingo if it was the right generation. Not the current one, and not the first one. I like the second one.
Put out an APB.
Cool. Listen, we have a lot to get to because we have Arndt Ellinghorst waiting in the wings. He is, to me, one of the most important analysts in the auto industry that I've followed. Like Ellinghorst, Adam Jonas, Steve
long
Mann,
time
Michael
analysts.
Dean. These are the people that I
they're
go
super
to.
smart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he races a classic car at Le Mans.
That is very cool.
So that's like
Yeah.
I want to
That's
be
legit.
him someday, Nice. Plus, we're going to talk about your column, and we won't spoil it, but we're going to talk about the most important and impactful car of the century so far. That's all coming up. This is Hot Pursuit.
Welcome back to Hot Pursuit. We are happy to have Arndt Ellinghorst joining us this week.
All right, so we just interviewed Dave Majors, the CEO of Mecum Auctions, and Arndt, I don't know if you saw the Mecum results from last month, but David Lee bought
obsessed.
a GTO for $38 million. Somebody bought a yellow Enzo for $18 million, and a Signal Orange 918 sold for $6 million. So
wow,
pretty insane, right? A Porsche 918 sold for $6 million. That's crazy.
Is that the highest ever?
Yes.
I mean, you follow it more closely than I do, but sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Hannah prefers the Carrera GT, right?
Wait, when have I said? Are you joking?
No,
Are you
you
teasing
said
me?
you think the Carrera GT is the last supercar, and I'm always like, the 918 was definitely a supercar.
Okay, sure. If you want to put it like that, yeah, I would not call it a 98. I'd call it a high-end sports car.
Oh my goodness, what a snob!
I agree with Hannah.
Thank you. Yes, I like you already. This is going very well.
Dude, let's talk first. Arndt, let's start just by getting your overview of the industry. Now, I followed everything you wrote when you were at ISI, and you were deep in it then. Now you're running an AI company. So how deep in it are you when it comes to the automotive industry and results and the business?
Look, I mean, you never leave it, right? I mean, it's a great industry. You suffer with the guys, obviously, with everything that's been happening the last couple of years. But it's it's a product that triggers a huge passion. So I think I've never really fully left the space. And with our tech company, with Quantco, we engaged with some of the OEMs. I was very close to BMW for 4 years, helping on a sort of advisory board. So yeah, I've followed the industry quite closely. Ask me about quarterly numbers. I know nothing anymore, which I think is great because it's sort of the painful thing as an analyst. But no, I've been following things, sure.
But didn't you work at Volkswagen and Audi before you got into banking?
Yeah, I've written my thesis at the end of my university with Audi, and that's what got me into the car space. And they've recommended me to a junior management program at Volkswagen, which I've joined. And I left right after, moving into finance, and then I've had a career in finance and research for many, many years, which was great fun. And that got me into many boardroom situations, and obviously translating between the industry, the capital market, engaging with investors during different times of cycles and crisis moments, whether that's industry, economy, or company specific. I mean, this industry has everything in it that you can imagine if you're interested in, analyzing anything in the economy. You get it all in autos.
Arndt, you mentioned crisis moments. We have to talk about Porsche right now, and obviously you have so much history and background. I know you are a deep enthusiast and owner and lover. Of course, we've seen the news that Porsche may scrap the 718 sort of Cayman Boxster EV line. Give us your perspective on where Porsche is right now in its history and its future, and what do you make of this announcement that they may scrap that plan?
You look, Hannah, I think, in any company there are bumps on the road, every now and then. And I think Porsche's just experienced such a bump. It's been a perfect storm from an economy perspective, whether that's, trade, US dollar, China. I mean, they've headed all these guys, right? And let's not forget, it's a company that's manufacturing in Germany predominantly, in Europe, and exporting into the world. So they can't hedge any of their exposure. So they're fully exposed. And, we're going full steam into EV, hitting all the brakes on EV. And it's just really tough for a company of that size. We talk about 300,000 cars roughly. So you don't have the economies of scale that some of the other OEMs have that can hedge their powertrains a bit better, that can, be a bit more flexible. Porsche just doesn't have that. So, I feel for them. At the same time, it is, as we all know, it's one of the greatest brands out there, full stop, not just automotive, right? So for Porsche, it's still, at the end of the day, it's a question of who do I expose, which customers do I expose myself to? Who do I want to be? Rather than, oh my God, I have to sell all these cars. I mean, it's really up to management to decide who they want to be. Do we want to be more a sports car company? Do we want to be more an SUV company? How much performance do we want? And, that's an adjustment I think they're going through currently, and they will come out of it. Last year's been very, very tough. But, also, IPOing the business and suddenly, being exposed to analysts and investors out there and trying to please everyone, that's also a new experience, right?
I think you make such a good point. Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, you make such a good point that they are a great brand that makes great products. And I think that's why this is so surprising or shocking, because the assumption is that this is the king of the hill for many people. Obviously it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback. Is there any way where we are now could have been avoided in your view? Or is it like you say that this truly was, they were completely exposed on every front and they could not have avoided being at this place where we are now?
No, I think some of the things were probably self-inflicted. I think the company was probably getting a bit, overly self-confident as we came out of COVID and pricing in the industry went north, and suddenly, oh my God, we're going to be a 15% margin company. Oh my God, we're going to be a 20% margin company. Oh my God, we're the greatest. And they fell in love with themselves, probably a bit too much. And then this, dual CEO structure with Oliver being CEO of Volkswagen and Porsche, which I think the Porsche families really asked him to do. So they were probably not as focused as they could have been. They fell in love, as I said, with themselves a little bit. I think they definitely drank a bit too much of the EV Kool-Aid, if you ask me. So there were a couple of things clearly that they could have avoided, self-inflicted pain. But look, it's always easy to say in hindsight. Sure. But that's...
I will say, I started working at Bloomberg 26 years ago. Saddled up to my desk in Frankfurt, Germany, writing about the stock market. And so we would cover the biggest companies and we had little taglines for each one. And for Porsche at the time, we would say the world's most profitable car maker, because they were, but and Wedekind was, the CEO, and I knew people who knew some people in the Porsche family. So, and I loved the cars, obviously. So I was very interested to follow. And it just seems to me that the Porsche family as an owner has made mistake after dramatic soap opera style mistake, like infighting with Piëch and trying to buy Volkswagen and end up getting swallowed up themselves. And now this journey into electric, and they're also not helped by the German board supervisory board rules. And it's just it could be a movie could be made about it. But of course, we all care more about the product than the business side. And Arndt, tell us about your experience with 911s. I see the poster of. Is that your car behind you that you race at Le Mans? It looks like it. And I think you have
that's a picture from 1969. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about that specific car, because it's so cool, and it must be a lot of work to keep up with that as much as it is to cover the company.
Well, it's a lot more fun. Look, I mean, we've picked up this car that was driven by Jackie Deschamel, French driver, and Philippe Farjeon, his co-pilot in 1969, 1970 at Le Mans. And they've quite successfully raced the car. And we brought it back to life and restored it properly, then got it, back into Le Mans for the first time in 2018.
Was it an ST? Was it the original ST, or was it which 911
was it? It's a bit earlier. Yeah, it's from '68, and they basically bought the TR kit from Porsche, which included the race engine of the 906. So it has a 225 horsepower engine, revving 8 to 9,000. So it's great fun. But look, in the context of Le Mans, you're obviously the smallest guy out there, right? And when we race in grid 5 with all these, 917 Porsches, GT40s, Lolas, prototypes, it's quite interesting. You feel quite slow and quite fast at the same time, which is it's absolutely fascinating. I love that race. I love the car. I love slightly older 911s. I had a 964 RS once, which I crashed in Goodwood on a track day. Silly me. But I really enjoy racing these older cars a bit more. They're lighter, they're more lively. And, they also give you a bit of a warning when you overdo it, which, some of the older Porsches don't, and because you can imagine I'm obviously not a great driver. That helps me a little bit.
Tell us how you really developed your love of cars. I think I read actually that you did not grow up in an automotive family. You didn't really grow up watching motorsport. How did this life and this car and all of this develop for you?
Sure, I read you had no TV.
Yeah, exactly. I was counting sheep somewhere in Germany. Look, I've had an older brother. He was restoring cars in our garage, and I helped him out. So I was basically
this is in Germany.
Kid, Yeah, that was in Germany. I was the little brother sanding, endlessly these Beetles and Comanches and other cars. So we've been restoring cars, and look. And my first car was a red Beetle. So I had a passion for that, but I wasn't, totally obsessed with it. And, out of coincidence, I happened to, start working at Audi and then Volkswagen. So that developed, obviously, an interest in the industry. And then I moved into finance, becoming an analyst, following the industry. So with that, I think, developed my passion for the industry, and then also the passion for the cars came back to me. I think at a time when I probably had a bit more money to spend to get an old 911, and then the fascination of taking part at Le Mans Classic is I think you don't have to explain too much about that. That's just a huge fun event.
So you have this 1968 911 with the TR kit restored, and I've seen another old, late 60s Porsche that I guess you drive around London. What's the story with that one?
Yeah, that's a recreation of a similar, of a TR. It's a short wheelbase.
So you're pretty partial to this late 60s TR.
I just love the whole history of guys, the passion to race, 60s, 70s. Usually they didn't have a lot of money, right? And they were getting all the tools and all the toys together. They were building up these racing engines, the racing cars, and then take them to race. And I think that's just fascinating. They were always running out of money, and then they crashed something, and then they built the car up again. So for me, I'm not a matching, engine, gearbox. Everything has to be matching. And in these cars, for me, these are cars that are put together by racing drivers, and then they're being driven properly. And in the orange white, call it TR recreation. It's actually a 2.7 liter engine in there. Do I care? No, and it's great fun. It's great fun, and I love that about the brand, right? That's what I mean. The essence of Porsche is always something, call it rebel, or however you want to call it. And then, if I think about the brand, it's probably become all a bit too much corporate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I mean, I think most people would want Porsche to be a bit more daring and, a bit more, outlaw, rebel, rather than, accountant,
is it
controller type
is it
brand.
Is it even realistic to think that Porsche might be able to get back to somewhere in that universe that you're describing with its current ownership structure and its current corporate structure? Is it even realistic to think it could approach that mentality again?
Yeah, I think that's a super important point in my view. I mean, nowadays they're selling 50,000 911, and then
a lot of
100,000 Cayenne, 100,000 Macan, or something. A lot of SUVs, right? So there's a lot of soccer mom in there. There's not a lot of a race driver in there anymore. But still, the brand is still a lot Steve McQueen, James Dean, at least in my conviction. And they have an interesting line in their current investor deck, which I think is wrong. And I wouldn't agree with that. They say it's not about what you buy, it's what you buy into. Right? And I do think it is really a lot about what you buy, right? And what you buy is a Porsche, and there should always be a lot of sports car, daring, racing, rally, rebel. That is the essence of the brand still, and that needs to be really, really looked after. So I think there should be, and there should be more, and not just pimping up a 911 here and there. It's like coming out with like proper performance, high-end performance cars. And I think that is something that's missing in the portfolio, and that's missing in the brand.
By the way, what do you think?
Even it might cost you some margin, but
yes.
I think I think that's more important.
What do you think, Arndt, about other brands? Because we've been talking a lot about Ferrari. They have increasingly become a very corporate and computerized, at least it looks by their products, car maker. There hasn't been a manual gearbox for like a decade or 2 decades. Aston Martin also has gotten rid of it completely, and their stock chart just goes down and to the left. Like, I keep thinking it can't get any cheaper, and I want to buy the stock, but then it gets cheaper and cheaper. What do you think about other brands? Like, when you look beyond Porsche, and I know you're probably super busy at work, and you dedicate what little time you have to racing Le Mans Classic, but what do you think about, do you have any hope for other car makers, or is anything else there interesting to you?
Yeah, I think you have this. I mean, you're either really super, super high end, and you're a Bugatti, you're a Koenigsegg, you're parts of Ferrari. Really, you sit in this ultra high end, ultra exclusive bucket, or you're sort of where Porsche is, and Porsche has bits of elements of a BMW, right? The high-end BMW SUVs. I mean, they're priced even above the Porsches. But I think Porsche is in a quite unique position to sell that number of cars at that price point, and that tells you a lot about the brand. And you can see with Aston Martin how difficult it is to replicate that. Look at the DBX. I mean, it's just so tough to get where Porsche is. So I'm not an expert really on Ferrari. It's not a brand or a product that would trigger me personally. I mean, they're amazing, but I guess I'm just so much more of a Porsche guy. But when I look at the economics behind these business models, I think you're either super high end and you can charge millions for a car, which very few can, or you're a Porsche. And let's not forget, Porsche does benefit from being connected to the VW, industrial conglomerate. That does certainly help.
I was talking to Lawrence Stroll earlier this week, and I put it to him that they make really beautiful designs. They're elegant, right? And Ferrari is becoming more, I don't even know what it is. It's not brutal, but it's just weird. And I said, dude, why don't you make a car with 3 pedals and embrace like mechanical intimacy instead of technological supremacy? But I think he was not having a great day and didn't feel like answering.
He didn't take that bait.
No, he didn't. But like somebody has to come out with something that's more analog, right?
Yeah, I don't know whether I'm sure you saw that. There was a Top Gear last year where they got Mate Rimac out, they got Christian Koenigsegg out, and they got Rob from Singer out on the track. And they all brought a car and raced their cars. And obviously, I think Mate brought a Rimac and he bought a Bugatti, and then the Koenigsegg was there. And they're all, lightning fast and smoking wheels and crazy acceleration. And I think Rob brought a Turbo Singer or something, I don't know. But anyhow, they've been racing these cars, but the biggest smiles on their face were, with this manual Porsche, flipping it around the track, making great noise. And I think that quite tells you something. Couldn't agree more on the comment you've made on the manuals.
I think at some point, I wouldn't be surprised to see what Mate does in the future. Because we know from his past, he is such a car guy. With his BMW that he built, and in any conversation we ever have with him, he too, Matt, supports your die-hard manual obsession. I don't think it's out of the and he's been pretty open about, unfortunately, things like the Navara have not sold. People don't want him. So I don't think it's crazy to think that Mate might come out of the blue at some point and do something really fun, because he is like that on the inside. It's a question of whether he has the financial and corporate freedom to do it. But to your point, I think he would agree with you exactly what you're saying.
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens to Bugatti.
Let me finally get your take on electrification, because a lot of people slag off this podcast saying that we don't like EVs, which isn't true. I love an electric powertrain in certain vehicles, and they're obviously quick and very simple. We've recently seen that car that can hang upside down. They're going to start making and selling those. I think it's a British car that has like a vacuum seal under it, and they're so fast. But what's your take?
That one at Goodwood.
Yeah. What's your take on the electrification of vehicles? And surely, in 20 years, most cars will be electric, right?
Yeah. Look, for driving around, for, especially urban mobility, electric is the technology to go to. Is an EV faster around the Nordschleife? Yeah, maybe. Can we use EV, hybridization to increase the performance of combustion engine? Yeah, sure. I get it for the environment. Look, I've been covering this space for so long. I've been making all the arguments about the value chain and where the batteries come from and the minerals and the energy and all that. I'm still a big fan of hybrid vehicles, if I'm honest, because I just don't believe in putting these huge batteries into vehicles that are being driven, 90% around the block. You just put so much energy into the car that's not really being used. So I think there's a lot of overkill to create that range. I like range extenders as well. But I think the industry is, we're learning, and there are a lot more flexible, interesting platforms coming out. that make more sense. We're just leaving this, phase where everyone said, all EV, only EVs. And then everyone said, oh, no more EVs. We hate EVs. And now people sit down and look at what really makes sense. And there are different powertrains. You need more flexibility on the powertrain based on where the car's being driven and so on. So yeah, look, electrification makes sense. Dude, if I want to have fun, I get my old 911 out. And whether that's London or Le Mans, that's just great fun.
Very cool.
Well, I think we both agree with you on that one.
For sure. Dude, Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it. It's been a while, so I'm glad to get in touch with you again. And next time I'm in London, I'll give you a shout.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Our thanks to Arndt Ellinghorst. Great hearing from him. I learned something from talking to any of these analysts. Love it. Coming up, Car of the Century. Welcome back to Hot Pursuit. Oh, Matt, I wanted to ask you. Okay, if you had to do like a knee-jerk reaction to the car of the century, what car would you say has had the most impact of this century?
Of this century?
Yeah.
Let me think.
You can think about it and tell me. I'm asking a bunch of people.
The car of the century.
Introduced since 2000.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking like a lot of people would argue Tesla for sure, right? Because before
Which Tesla?
Well, the Model S was the first one that proved you could have a viable electric car and people would buy it and it would be drivable and you could make it,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, and that kind of changed a lot, right? I wouldn't say it changed everything because now there's some backlash, but it's now every car maker offers an EV, and that wouldn't be the case if it hadn't been for, I would say, the Model S.
Yep.
Do you think it would be a different one, like the Roadster? Or?
No. So I'm writing a column about this, and I'm asking a bunch of people. And if we want to, I'm not going to reveal what I think is the car of the century because I'll save that for the column if we're taping this.
Good point.
But I hear what you're saying, and that all makes a lot of sense. And I've already started the column, so for hindsight, time stamping, this column is already mostly written. So when it comes out, you will know that I had already written it before you giving your answer, Matt.
Okay.
But I have to say some other people have said some. Do you want to go through what other people have said?
Yes, please, because I think it's a big question.
It's a big question.
And
yes.
You could make arguments for other vehicles.
Nissan Leaf.
I
actually
suppose,
predated the Model S barely and has sold more. Somebody said the Nissan Leaf to me, which is it's a valid suggestion.
Right.
Right?
It is valid, but I think Tesla really changed the way, like the Nissan Leaf definitely didn't and probably still wouldn't have had as much of an impact on the way Mary Barra thinks or the way, Jim Farley thinks as, when you talk to CEOs, they all refer to Elon Musk, And
the Leaf didn't do that, even though it actually beat the Model S.
No one's quoting Carlos Ghosn.
No.
So, but I'm sure you could make arguments for other vehicles, and probably you could make arguments for ones that aren't even in the American zeitgeist. Because my mind also sort of went to F-150, right? Mm-hmm. Because you could say utilitarian.
But that's not from this century.
Okay, that's true.
Someone did say, here's for another conversation starter, the Porsche Cayenne, because it was the first wave of premium SUVs and was a big bucket of profitability for Porsche, generated a ton of cash that actually helped Porsche attempt to take over VW. So there's that argument.
Did it predate the X5?
The Cayenne? Ooh. Let me see.
Let me see here. No one knows anything anymore. We just Google stuff, right? It did not. The X5 made its debut in 1999.
Yeah.
So
that doesn't count.
In my consciousness, the X5 was the first time I thought of a luxury SUV. At least one that I would have wanted and seen on the street and been like, oh, cool, an X5.
I mean, the Cayenne, like, that is an interesting suggestion.
True.
Because I do think it helped save Porsche in a very real way, which has had big ramifications.
It's hard for me to ever wrap my head around the fact that Porsche has had these problems in the past. And I know, like, when I watch history of 911s, people say, like, certain generations had to save the car maker. Or we view certain generations differently now than we did during. I remember when I first wanted to honestly buy a 911 when I had like money and I was ready to go out and get a car, and my buddy was like, dude, you should get one of these, and he was sending me used 964 classifieds at the time, and I wanted the 996 because I thought the headlights looked cooler. I was like, no, I want the new one because it has that strange like double headlight thing.
You have not admitted this.
I know, but this was 2000.
That is your pure reaction. This shows truly, before you were influenced by all these other peanut gallery, your true reaction was you did like it.
At the time, yeah. When I was, I was a kid. I was in my early 20s. I like just got a job, and man, do I regret.
Have you seen
not
the
pulling
black
the trigger
one that Magnus is selling?
Yeah, I know.
The GT2, because that is a killer looking car. I know it's a 996, but literally when I saw it, I was like, oh, if Matt thinks he doesn't like 996, he hasn't seen this.
I still think I don't like the headlights. And by the way, I got an email from a listener this morning who was like, dude, just pony up and buy a new Carrera T. And it's
save us all a lot of time and effort, emotional energy.
I did, and I found one that I wanted, and I put it all together, and my wife was like, what planet do you live on? That's not happening. So I still have to convince her. But
okay, let's go back to the topic at hand.
Yes, I think without spending hours thinking about it, which I now will do since you asked the question, and I now will ask everybody that I run into. This is my new question.
Yes.
But my knee-jerk reaction is the Model S, because I think it changed the car world completely.
Even though the Roadster was before it. Obviously, the Roadster was built on a Lotus platform.
The Roadster was before it, but it was still like a kit car feeling kind of thing. I remember the first time I ever drove in one with Jason Harper. We went up to Bear Mountain and barely made it back. Oh, and that was that was part of the fun.
That's a good story.
But the Model S was a legitimate car, like a real OEM product, and for years, if not decades before that, people would talk about electric cars, and my friends, in high school would like get high on the porch and say, man, big auto is just trying to stop us from doing electric because of the gas industry, and like.
It's the man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Tesla was the first one to really stick it to the man with that.
Yeah. Okay, well, if we're talking electric, what about something like the LaFerrari, which was you could argue that was the first model that really used electrification for superior performance, not just, it's going to save the world. What's your thought on that? Someone else suggested. Kyle Stock, actually. I'll give him credit. Kyle Stock suggested.
So my take on that is before the LaFerrari came the Porsche 918 Spider.
Sure. Well, Kyle also did mention that too.
Yeah.
He sent me a few ideas. Yeah.
So, and there was the McLaren P1, the LaFerrari, and the 918.
Sure.
But for me, the 918 was the first time that I really thought about the fact that you could do hybrid and not care at all about the environment. Like it wasn't.
Yes.
It didn't need to be green at all. It was just for performance.
It could have actual benefits unrelated to whatever marketing campaign.
Yeah. Also, I never loved the look of the LaFerrari.
Well, you are really you're feeling a little anti-Ferrari.
No.
At the moment.
I was just going to say, I remember the only time I have seen one up close really was I got into Sergio Marchionne's LaFerrari.
That's a mic drop.
And I didn't like the look of it, and at the time I remember not liking the look of the Enzo either.
I was just going to say, how can you say, and I just heard you say this, you never knew you wanted an Enzo so bad until you saw that yellow one that sold for $18 million.
True, because now
which looks like the LaFerrari.
You're right. Dude, tastes change over time, right?
Yeah, you're maturing.
Maybe it'll change again in 10 years. Like, I don't know.
10 minutes.
I also didn't like the Grateful Dead when I first heard them, and now they're my favorite band. And, I think everyone has ever-changing tastes. And now when I look at the Enzo, it just looks so cool and different. And it looks almost wrong. Like they accidentally put the wrong rear end on a different front end, but I love the way it turned out. So, yeah.
I don't think we could have a LaFerrari without an Enzo.
No, I agree with you 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
It's a clear
fun to
evolution.
Think about, It is.
What are some of the other answers that people have given you?
Okay, so Nissan Leaf, Tesla Roadster, LaFerrari 918 were a couple, Cayenne. Do you know Michael Dean?
Of course.
Yeah.
I follow his work religiously.
Michael suggested the Cayenne, actually. He also wanted to throw in his vote for the SLS AMG, mostly because I think he was in Stuttgart when he was emailing me.
Come on.
No, he just loves it. And then he also wanted to say the 991 because it took the 911 to a new level of pricing, but I think that's splitting hairs, and we can't include the 911 in this.
I mean, I don't think LaFerrari or Porsche 991 can go down as car of the century.
Okay, here's one more that could be polarizing. Also from Michael, the Cullinan Rolls-Royce, because it's so ridiculous in how it looks and how much it weighs, but it turned around the fortunes of Rolls-Royce, and says Michael, he kind of loves it.
Okay, but the Bentley Bentayga came before that, and it's even more ridiculous looking.
It wasn't good, though.
No.
When it first came out, and that's an actual fact.
I mean, is Cullinan? I've never driven a Cullinan.
Oh, you would love it.
I'm a huge fan of Rolls-Royce. I'm a huge fan of
really
big
good
cars, but I've never driven one of those.
They're really, I mean, not to brag, but I first drove it in Jackson Hole up a Black Diamond ski run.
Nice.
And then I drove it in a rally in Death Valley for like 4 days in the desert, completely off-road. It sounds insane. And I would say if it wasn't good, because the Bentayga was not good. But it is very capable.
By the way, you don't like the Bentayga in terms of the way it drives, the way it's engineered, or just the way it looks and the name?
Well, I'm talking about when it first came out. They have greatly improved it. And I just drove the Speed last year, and it was really nice. But when it first came out years ago, no, it was not good. It wasn't ready. It was awkward. It wasn't good.
So I think going back to your column, the only two that make sense to me are cars that have changed the way the industry operates today.
Sure.
And the Tesla Model S, I think, is a clear winner for changing the way every car maker operates, pretty much. And the Cayenne is like a runner-up because it is the precursor to the SUV-ification of all cars, right? I mean,
SUV-ification?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know, Ford doesn't even really sell cars anymore. They're all SUVs or trucks. Okay, they sell the Mustang. Thank God. And please keep making that. But so those two make sense to me, but none of the others really do.
Okay. Well, stay tuned. My column, with a bit of luck, and we do have a long weekend coming up when I will not be writing, but should be out next week. Maybe we can talk about it.
Very cool.
Yeah. That does it for this week's show. Remember to follow and subscribe to Hot Pursuit on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen. You can also send us your comments. Email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
And check out Hannah's columns and stories on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. Go there for car reviews, events, and stories that you won't find anywhere else. Find it all at Bloomberg.com/pursuits/autos, including this week her column on Collector Cars, and next week, her column on Car of the Century. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott. We'll be back in your podcast feed again next week.